I found a very different doctor in the dark web. In retrospect, it's kind of ironic that my love for the science I chose would be my predicament. I mean, it looks unfair that my curiosity and thirst for knowledge would lead me to such a shady path. Only thing I ever wanted was to be better at my job. I am a medicine student, and for as long as I can remember myself, I was fascinated by the human body. No matter how bad we treat it sometimes, it's nothing short of perfection. The structure and function of the organs, the delicate, high-functioning brain, the blue snake-like veins carrying the blood into the heart to be cleaned and recycled, simply magnificent. It was a simple choice for me. I wanted to study more about the body, learn all the details it hides, and sometimes rectify it. Now don't get me wrong, I didn't really enjoy studying to get into medicine school. Most of the time it was a tedious process of learning about irrelevant topics that I really didn't care about, but I managed to pull through and get into the university. There I developed very mixed feelings. Although some lectures were diving into the secrets of what we were supposed to be learning about, most were simple stuff read from PDF presentations by a semi-bored professor. The kind of knowledge you could acquire by reading some science magazines. Magazines I've already read. So most of the time I went to the campus feeling indifferent, secretly hoping that I could get to learn something amazing, like perhaps a new fun fact in the anatomy class. But that was rare. I can't say I have many friends. Come to think of it, I don't think I have any. I'm friendly with all my classmates and peers, but we really don't have anything else in common, other than we study the same subject. They didn't study the way I did. Most of them value the prestige and paycheck that comes with being a doctor. Some truly wanted to help others in times of sickness, but no one wanted to actually learn. Not the way I did. They consumed themselves in parties, drugs, and sex with each other, while I went the extra mile and studied something more than the given material every night, just to tame my lust for knowledge. I remember the day Jonathan approached me in the campus cafeteria. It was in a break between some classes we both participated in. He sat opposite to me and asked how I was doing. We chatted a bit about everything and nothing, and mostly regarding some projects we were both working on as homework at the time. I liked this guy. Jonathan wasn't the best student or the most intriguing person, but I knew he truly loved medicine and tried his best to learn more than what the university spoon-fed us. I respected him for that, so it came as a pleasant surprise when he introduced me to this new idea. "Hey man," he said, "I know that you feel bored here. I sort of get it too sometimes." Boy, was he right. "I found a man that really knows his stuff," he continued, and then more hesitantly, "There is a link on the dark web of a very good doctor. His methods are a bit unconventional, so he can't broadcast to the normies, but he's really skillful. I mean, at least his teachings have helped me a lot with my exams." He laughed at this. I thought about it for a while before answering. "Sure," I said. "Let's see what this mysterious doctor has to offer." By then, I had read many books and articles already, and I would give anything to see something fresh. Jonathan smiled and gave me a note with the alleged link. "Nice, bro. If you need any help with this dark web thing, give me a call. My phone is also on the note. Would be cool to chill out in the doctor's chat room and learn from him. I am by no means a computer guy, but I can work my way through some stuff, so I won't bore you with the details on how I got to the site. Most of you here are familiar with this kind of thing. The stories, anyway. The path is simple. You get the appropriate software to enable you to go into the dark web, and then you start searching. You have to be very specific of what you're looking for, though. Otherwise, you'll get lost in a mountain of cyber junk. And specific I was. I got to the link I wanted relatively fast. It was a site called Anatomy 102. It had a plain gray template and the classical ancient Greek symbol of medicine as a logo, a snake wrapping itself around a rod, although it was a little different than the usual one. The snake looked like it was biting on something, and that something sort of resembled a human skull. That looked a little particular. There was a camera focused on an empty white room and also a chat room. The chat room had around 50 people active, casually talking about various medicine specializations, speculating what they would learn about today. Around 10 minutes later, two people appeared in the room, both wearing the typical Operation ROM uniforms, dragging a big table of surgery tools with them. One of them disappeared from the screen, and the other stood in front of the camera, still wearing his mask. Hello, my dear audience. It brings me great pleasure to see so many of you here today. This is a place of learning and understanding, so I would advise all of you to pay attention and observe all of the details today. I liked this intro. A true professor. For all of those who happen to be new here, let me introduce myself. I am going by the name Dr. Mason here, but you can just address me as Doctor in the chat. Every 2 weeks we gather around here to discuss something about the anatomy and how it works in practical ways. As he finished his words, the other guy came back into frame, this time pushing a surgery table before him. The table was full, and I guess it had a dead body or a sleeping person. By that time, the count on the chat room had read 250 people online. The other guy, also wearing a mask, took the sheet that was covering the body on the bed to reveal something I wasn't prepared for. A living human, fully awake, muffled and tied to the bed with leather straps. He was middle-aged, brown hair, and had a very scared look in his eyes. The man was sweaty and in obvious distress, but couldn't do much. Just laying there tied like a piece of meat. As you know, the doctor continued, the digestive system is one of the most important systems in the human body. It is a source of all the energy, input and output of animals. Today we'll give it a closer look. The chat box was filled with lots of expressions of happiness, as people seemed to be content with the idea of the S and I for once felt nervous. I could never expect what followed next. The doctor started operating on the man on the bed. Without using any anesthesia, he cut open an incision in his belly, while the man's screams were drowned behind the muffler. After that, he started taking parts of the victim's intestines out and showing them on camera, talking in detail about everything, and also applied pressure to certain points to demonstrate what he was talking about, generating huge amounts of pain for the helpless victim. During the whole process, he showed no hint of emotion. The chat was filled with questions, most of which he replied to. Same way our professors talked to us back in uni. He paid extra attention to those who wanted him to experiment on the limitations of the victim. He noted that the people asking those questions had true motivation to learn and will progress in their career. After that statement followed through with the suggestions given to him. Blood had started to make a puddle on the floor. Every now and then the victim would faint by the sheer pain he felt, but the doctor's helper would wake him up every time. The doctor insisted that it was important for the patient to have his senses in order for us to take notes of his reactions. I was shocked, but I couldn't look away. Same thing when you see a gruesome accident on the street and you know that if you check to see what happened, you'll feel the urge to throw up, but you still can't turn your head and look. Your eyes thirsty for the odd and the gore. The procedure was getting more and more extreme. The incision was even bigger now than when the doctor explaining the reflexes of the stomach while holding the actual man's organ in his hand. He applied pressure to it, and a wave of gastric fluids went through, and the now crying man's esophagus choked him as he was lying face up. It didn't last much longer after this. The victim went unconscious, and it seems that even the helper couldn't bring him up anymore. After a few tries, the helper looked at the doctor and nodded. The doctor then returned his face to the camera. Well, all right, class. That's all I had to talk about today. Any questions? A few messages appeared on the chat box, and he selectively answered them. Unfortunately, that's all the time we had for today, class, he said, and then continued. Okay, who would like to volunteer for our next lesson? The chat suddenly went silent. Oh, come on, such a shy audience. You'll never become true scientists if you're afraid to take risks. But anyhow, most of you already know the procedure. If no one volunteers, I will randomly choose someone from the chat, and by next lecture in 2 weeks' time, he or she will be the person in the bed leading us all into enlightenment. To be honest, the patient's job is more important than mine. I am just explaining things, so he or she should be very proud and cherish the fact that they are actually the real teacher here. Still silence. All right then, but I'm not happy about that. Let me find someone myself. He appeared to be searching for something on his monitor. Username HealthyRaven96 will be with us next lesson, and I'll see you all then. HealthyRaven96 got instantly disconnected. The others started to log out too. While some stayed to discuss the lesson, I turned my PC off. What had I just watched? This was more like a cult than a classroom. It wasn't natural to use a human guinea pig for teaching, but still, I learned so much. This person talked with such passions for science and had a strange charisma you may even call charm. But no matter, I decided to never open that site again. I was not going to be participating in this illegal situation. I knew how wrong this was, but deep inside, my everlasting thirst was still demanding more. I broke my promise 2 weeks later. It was the day of the supposed lecture, and I couldn't take it out of my mind. I logged into Anatomy 102 once again. This time, a young woman was on the bed. The process was similar. Dr. Mason introduced himself and started his lesson. This time focused on the nervous system. I was hooked before I even knew it, and watched the entire talk without flinching this time, until the moment that unlucky girl was dead. I hadn't even moved from my chair. And this became part of my life. I was following every lecture, showing 100% attendance. I watched as men, women, and on rare times even underage people were brought to their untimely death for the sake of science. I started participating actively, asking questions about amputations and tissue damage, and sometimes I was the one who suggested the craziest experiments. I wasn't addicted to the gore in particular, but it was a small price to pay for knowledge. I learned so much. For example, that the pain threshold we are taught that the human body can withstand is bullshit. I saw with my very own eyes how much the human organism can suffer before giving up for good. That and many other things that are not to be told in this post. The months went by fast. I kept watching the lectures. Some rare times there was someone inspired so much from the doctor's words that he or she would volunteer for the lesson, making all of us sigh in relief. But those times were rare. It was mostly Russian roulette every week. I was scared, of course, but the risk was worth the reward. At the same time, I studied even harder, completely locking myself out of the real world. I wanted to learn even more now. So much I was inspired by the masked man. Then the day came which I never expected to come. The doctor had finished the lecture, slowly turning a man's brains into mashed potatoes, and as always was looking for a volunteer. After the usual awkward silence, I heard something truly terrifying. Okay, students, next to come on here with us will be Lotus Eclipse. My username. My stupid username, made as a pun from my favorite car. I had thought that this might happen, but never actually thought I would. The chances were always pretty low, and I was enjoying the classes way too much to stop. For the first time since that fateful day that I learned about this damned site, I called the only man I knew could understand me, Jonathan. He picked up the phone. We talked about it for a long time, and in the end we managed to formulate a solution. We spent the rest of the time until the lecture in my house. We were together all the time in order to succeed in what we planned. 3 days before the lecture was to happen, we were attacked while we were in my house. I don't know how he found us, but truth be told, the doctor never failed to locate his forced volunteer. He was with his helper, as I had predicted. Jonathan had had an idea earlier this week and had bought us a couple of gas masks as a precaution. I don't know how he foresaw that, but we were prepared for the gas that our stalkers used that night. I guess that's how the doctor managed to get his victims in the operating room in one piece every time. People perhaps were prepared for an assault, but very few had thought of that. I was lucky to have access to a gun, heirloom from my early deceased father. I managed to shoot the doctor in the knee before he could attack. The helper was not much of this ice-cold man I had thought of when I'd watched him in the live streams. He was, for the most part, very willing to help us with whatever we wanted in exchange for his life. After I got all the information I wanted, I shot him in the head, just to take his annoying whining out of my ears. And well, here we are today. As I'm typing this, I hear the muffled voice of a man behind me. It was easy to get the codes for the streaming and the doctor's username and passwords from the crying helper pleading for his life, so that I could continue the job and the idea that he started. I felt that he had helped me a lot during this time, and it was time for me to help others myself. With Jonathan at my side, we would venture into experiments which no one had ever dared to conduct. We would take science and medicine many steps ahead, through our will to try new things. But it just felt right that I would give Dr. Mason a great gift. He always believed that the man on the bed was doing the greater sacrifice, and I wanted to let him have this honor for his last ever appearance in the classroom. His screams and violent shaking on the bed, though, gave a different suggestion. I guess he wasn't such a believer and a pioneer as he always thought, huh? But no matter. The time has come for someone new to take his place. Someone with a vision, skills, cunningness. Someone like me to continue his work. So, friends, I invite you all to join us. We will learn together and find answers to all the questions we still have about the human body, so that in time we can perfect knowledge of medicine and its practices. Come to the stream and be part of the class, as we'll examine all there is to be about the human organism, and feel free to ask questions. My helper and I will be happy to answer them, or show some real-life examples to help you understand better. Now, if you'll excuse me, the lesson's about to start, and I have planned a very special lecture as a parting gift for Mr. Mason. I will see you all in class.